The first thing I'm going to cover is the allocation framework. I want to build on that betting analogy we used a minute ago to help you understand how to allocate equity in a startup company over time. This is a dynamic model. It means it changes over time versus a fixed model, which is when you set it in stone up front. In slicingpie, we use a fictional unit of risk called a slice. If you see the term slices, it's just like a poker chip. It marks the fact that a bet took place. It's not worth anything. You can't buy anything with it. It has no value. It simply marks the fact that a bet took place. So the first step is you convert your contributions to slices, and I'll show you the math how that works. It accounts for cash and non-cash thing. At any given point, your share of the company is worth your slices divided by all the slices. Just like in blackjack, it was your chips divided by all the chips. So I had one chip, you had 3 chips, I had 25%, you had 75%. And it will self-adjust over time. As more bets are made, it will self-adjust over time, which is why it's dynamic. Fixed means we set it in stone at one point in time, and we fight about it later, and fight about it later, and fight about it later. Dynamic means it automatically adjusts to stay fair as things change in your company. Now there's 2 kinds of contributions people can make, only 2. There's non-cash contributions, which are things like people's time, their ideas, their relationships, things that don't require cash out of your pocket. And there's cash contributions, which do require cash out of your pocket. Expenses, basically unreimbursed expenses. Now, like if you buy a plane ticket that costs $1,000 and you're not reimbursed, then you're betting the value of that plane ticket, the $1,000, on the future outcome of the company. Some things sort of fall in the middle and you have to do some thought about them. For instance, if I had a piece of equipment like a truck sitting in my backyard and I gave it to the company to use for their company, it's non-cash because it didn't require cash out of my pocket to take it out of my backyard. If I buy it for the company, then I took cash out of my pocket, so it's a cash contribution. So you got to think of, did I take cash out of my pocket, literally take cash out of my pocket, or did I contribute something that did not require me to take cash out of my pocket? So all you do is take the fair market value of each contribution, my time or money, relationships are based on commissions, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or how much money did I take out of my pocket for cash. Now, the chance of losing your cash is pretty high. So we want to accommodate the fact that it's pretty high. There's a high risk value there, risk of loss, so we multiply it by 2. So for every $1 in non-cash you put in, you get 2 slices, 2 chips on the table. For every $1 in cash, you get 4 slices. And the reason I give you more slices, the reason the logic gives you more slices, is to accommodate for the difference in cash and non-cash. If you wanted to buy something that costs, say, $50, and I paid you $50 an hour to work for me, it would take you more than an hour to earn enough money. Because when I paid you, I pay employment taxes and Social Security taxes. When you receive the money, you'd pay income taxes. And when you bought the thing, you'd pay sales tax and VAT tax. So it may take you more than an hour, probably 2 hours, to earn enough money to buy that one thing. So because of the taxes and the scarcity of cash and the risk associated with losing cash and the opportunity cost of losing cash, we give you twice as many slices. This smooths out the difference between non-cash and cash. $50 in cash is not the same thing as $50 in time. So we got to make that accommodation. This is one of the secret things that makes this model work, where the models have failed that are also dynamic. So to recap, for every $1 in non-cash you put in, time and ideas and relationships, things like that, you get 2 slices. For every $1 in cash, you get 4 slices. So an example. So for your time is a non-cash contribution. It doesn't cost me money out of my pocket to spend time on a project. So you take the fair market salary, you subtract cash compensation, because if you're paid, it's not at risk. In fact, if I paid you 100% of your salary, you don't get any equity because you're getting paid, you're not taking any risk. And indeed, most of us have jobs. We get paid 100% of our salary. We go about our lives hunky-dory. Everything's okay. Sometimes, if we're not getting paid, we deserve that to be made up, and that's our risk. That's our bet. So you multiply by 2 to get our grunt hourly resource rate, or GRR, which is the sound we make when we're hard at work in our company. So for instance, let's say I'm worth $50 an hour, which on an annualized basis is $100,000 a year. I multiply it by 2. For every hour that I'm not paid $50 an hour or not paid my salary, I'm betting 100 slices per hour. And by the way, you don't have to track by hour. You can track by paycheck, for instance. Whatever makes sense for your company is how you track, whatever level of granularity you want to track. But in startups, people often track by hour because it's people work part-time or more than part-time, so they track by hour. But for the most part, just think about, I'm tracking things like most companies track. Most companies pay payroll, and they track payroll, and they cover expenses. They're just things they do as a matter of fact. We're going to do those too in slicingpie, but instead of tracking what we are spending, we're also tracking what we're not spending. So let's say that I'm paying you part of your salary. So you're worth 50 bucks an hour, and I'm paying you 10 bucks an hour from company revenue, for instance. Then your risk is lower. It's 40 bucks an hour. So you're getting 80 slices per hour in current hourly resource rate. So it adjusts based on how much you're getting paid. And eventually I'll pay you your whole salary, and you'll stop accumulating slices. Money, they take the cash amount of the money, multiply by 4, when it's consumed, when it's spent. If I put 50 bucks in the bank, it's not a risk because it's just sitting in the bank. You could give it back to me. If you spend the money on stuff, then it becomes at risk, and you multiply by 4. Equipment, if it's new equipment that I bought for the company, I multiply by 4 because it required cash out of my pocket. If it's less than a year old, I use the purchase price, for instance. If it's more than a year old, I'll use the blue book value. Always reduce things to their fair market value. Relationships. Relationships are very important to startups, but they're only important to the extent they convert to value. I can have all the relationships in the world, but if I can't convert them to value, who cares? So you use a commission rate. Most of the ways that people get money out of a relationship is through a commission or a finder's fee So your unpaid commission is considered a non-cash contribution. It did not require cash in every pocket. Ideas. Everyone's all gung-ho about my idea is worth billions of dollars. It's not. It's worth whatever you could license your idea to a company that can afford to pay you. If no one pays for your idea, no one wants your idea, it's either worthless or it's priceless. It's probably worthless. So you can negotiate a royalty with your startup, and its unpaid royalty is a non-cash contribution. Supplies and equipment that you buy for the company is unreimbursed expenses. That's times 4. Everything has a value, a fair market value. It's much easier to calculate the fair market value than it is to calculate the future value or the potential value.